एपीजे अब्दुल कलाम का मानना था कि इस देश के सबसे अच्छे दिमाग क्लास के आखिरी बेंच पर मिल सकते हैं। इसलिए यह जरूरी है कि हर बच्चे को शिक्षा के समान अवसर उपलब्ध करवाए जाएं और ऐसी शिक्षा उपलब्ध करवाई जाए जिससे कि कोई भी हीरा अपनी खान में छुपा ना रह जाए। ऐसे ही हीरों को तराशने में बरसों से लगे हुए हैं हमारे आज के विशेष अतिथि, वर्ष 2014 में नोबेल शांति पुरस्कार विजेता श्री कैलाश सत्यार्थी जी, जो पिछले 4 दशकों से बच्चों के अधिकारों के लिए लड़ते हुए उनके शिक्षा दीक्षा के लिए सतत प्रयासरत हैं। कुछ कम ही आंका जाएगा अगर मैं कहूं कि सफर की हद है वहां तक कि कुछ निशान रहे। चले चलो कि जहां तक आसमां रहे। आइए अभिनंदन करते हैं श्री कैलाश सत्यार्थी जी का, जिन्होंने वर्ष 2014 में नोबेल शांति पुरस्कार प्राप्त कर आसमां की बुलंदियों को छू लिया। माननीय, आपका स्वागत है। सत्र का आगाज करते हैं एक विशेष वीडियो प्रस्तुति के साथ। आइए।
The Nobel Peace Prize for 2014 is to be awarded to Kailash Sathyarthi for their struggle against suppression of young people and children.
There is no greater violence than to deny the dreams of our children. I refuse to accept that the laws and constitutions are unable to protect our children. Today is the time for every child to have the right to life. I refuse to accept that the shackles of slavery can ever be more stronger than the quest for freedom. I refuse to accept here.
Getting a greeting like this is all the reward Kailash Sathyarthi needs for freeing these children from a life of slavery. He tries to give these kids the childhood they missed.
Do you think these kids see you as a Nobel Peace Prize winner?
No, I don't think they see me as friend or brother or something like father. I have looked into their frightened and exhausted eyes. I've held their injured bodies and I have felt their broken spirits. I refuse to accept that children belonging to certain sections of society are born to work for others at the cost of their childhood and freedom and education.
If the children are exploited, if the children are deprived from their childhood in any part of the world cannot live in peace. The world cannot be human.
It's not often the two winners of the Nobel Peace Prize get together, but it happened yesterday when President Obama met Kailash Sathyarthi. They were joined by 3 children who were rescued from child trafficking and forced marriage.
You cannot live in isolation. All the problems and solutions are interconnected. And so the problem of child labor in any part of the world is your problem.
Sathyarthi organizes raids with local police, but sometimes employers are tipped off and waiting for him armed.
But I have been attacked many times in my life.
You had a gun to your head?
Literally here.
This is dangerous work, freeing these kids.
Somebody has to pay the cost for freedom. It does not come on plate. So if not me, then who else will do? Nobel Prize.
Who won the Nobel Prize, he asks. Their reply, all of us kids.
It's good.
Every single minute matters. Every single child matters. Every single childhood matters.
नमस्ते सभी बहनों को। अभी तो स्क्रीन पर बहनें ही बहनें दिख रही हैं,
कुछ भाई भी होंगे, कहीं ना कहीं पीछे छुपे बैठे होंगे, and that is a good sign that our sisters, our ladies, our daughters, our mothers on the dais or on the screen, and adult man are hiding behind. ये जो 5000 साल से ट्रेडिशन चली आ रही है, कुछ बदलोगे आप तो बहुत अच्छा है. I begin with taking this opportunity to express my deep gratitude to some of your affiliate or member institutions where all my children studied. My son Bhuvan Ribhu and daughter Asmita studied in APJ school, Sheikh Sarai, where we lived. My daughter-in-law Priyanka studied in DPS, and my son-in-law studied in APJ again. So thank you. If any of the principals or teachers is listening, thank you. In this post-pandemic or the pandemic time, the theme you have chosen, bridging the gap for a sustainable, inclusive learning world, and the topic given to me, an equal world for every child, is extremely important and appropriate, perhaps necessary. But before coming to the situation and how to challenge and change it, I would begin with a very deep solution, which I'm not suggesting. Perhaps nobody can suggest it as the ancient masters of wisdom and knowledge, divine knowledge, the rishis of Vedas have suggested. There is a prayer which is also resolved in Rig Veda, and that says, Sangachadhvam samvadadhvam samvo manansi janatam deva bhagam yatha purve sanjananam upasate. A simple mantra of inclusion, sustainability, equity, and equality. And the simple meaning is that we resolve that all of us march together. Let us march together hand in hands. No one is left out. No one is left behind. There is no discrimination. It says, let us all march together. And for that, we have to create a level playing field, level walking field. We have to ensure equal opportunities for everyone to walk together. It also says, let us talk together. We have to create an environment of freedom to talk, freedom to express ourselves, and reach to some unison, some collective conclusion. And then we can speak with one tongue. It also says that let us come together and think together. But more importantly, in the end of this mantra, it says, Sanjananam upasate. Let us assemble here together and create a knowledge. That is the knowledge for everyone. That is the knowledge for all. So knowledge which is created by all of us and then used by all of us, created for all of us, that is the democratization of knowledge. That is the purpose of creation of knowledge, which is not for a few people, few elite or privileged ones. This is for all. Dear friends, I have been saying during the post-pandemic and pandemic time that COVID-19 is not a health crisis alone. It is not only economic crisis. This is the crisis of civilization. This is the crisis of education. This is the crisis of inclusion, and this is the crisis of humanity. But this crisis also gave us a great opportunity to think and act that world is so interdependent. World is so interconnected. No problem can be seen and solved in isolation. We have to learn to live together. This is not just a preaching that has been taught to us for ages in all religions and cultures, but a pandemic is pushing us to think that we cannot survive if we don't think and act together. This oneness of humankind. Unfortunately, this is not happening. And that's why the entire concept of sustainability and inclusion is in crisis. Perhaps some of you know that I'm also working with the United Nations Secretary General. He formed a small inclusive group, and that is the UN Sustainable Development Advocates. So I am one of the advocates focusing on the issue of education, child labor, child slavery, and child rights in particular. And education is one of the key rights. And we are all, including Secretary General, are very concerned that this pandemic is derailing most of our progress which we have made over the years, rather over the decades. Today, when I am talking to you, 160 million children must be languishing in child labor, slavery, trafficking, prostitution, forced to take guns in their hands as child soldiers. And their cries remain unheard. Those who are living and pushed into brothels and the situations like slaves in mines and factories. Today, when we are talking, almost 60, now I think the number has grown up to 70 or 80 million children who have never seen their classrooms. They have never seen the gate of their schools. They have never been to schools. Another 200 or more than 200 million children who left schools before completion of primary education. And the big concern now for all of us, that we don't act with utmost compassion, with utmost priority, with utmost urgency, with utmost big heart to invest in our children, then at least 24 million additional children would be dropped out of school globally. And 45 million additional children would join the child labor workforce. So if we are talking about creating an equal world for all children, we have to think perhaps more deeply and act more responsibly. When I was the founder and the president of Global Campaign for Education, we have pushed several ideas, and we are happy and proud to say that we have been able to push the agenda of education in SDGs in two folds. One was to incorporate the phrases like inclusion, equity, alongside quality. So in the Sustainable Development Goals, these four key factors are underlined: equity, inclusion, quality, and lifelong learning. Because lifelong learning was the key factor. If in most of the countries during the MDG time, the age of schooling was 14 or 15, then a large number of children were pushed into child labor, slavery, and child marriages. So we have been pushing for this agenda of lifelong learning. That is the part of SDG now. And that time, before pandemic, 22 billion additional dollars were needed to guarantee education for every child in primary classes. And since the SDG has lifted the age to secondary classes also, we needed $40 billion additional money. But what is this $40 billion? If you compare with the global military expenditure, and unfortunately, we don't stop as we see in case of Russia and Ukraine now, this is only a week-long global military expenditure. People call it defense, but a person like me would always call it offense, because if we create a gun and if we are not able to build a school or a classroom, if we don't provide books and toys and pencils in the hands of our children and give them tools and guns, it means there's something very seriously wrong in the evolution of our civilization and the history which we have to change. We cannot tolerate it. So dear friends, there are so many obstacles where we are not able to achieve this equity or equality in education, at least equity in education. But creating equal world for all children means we have to be more compassionate. I have been calling for years that we have globalized markets and economies. We have globalized production, exploitation, information, technology, everything. But this is the right time to globalize compassion. I'm not talking about sympathy or empathy. I'm talking about compassion, means feeling the suffering of others as your own feeling, with a drive and desire to take action to alleviate that suffering, because you feel that suffering as your own suffering. So I have one single parameter of development. We keep on talking development, it becomes our new religion globally. But what does it mean? Mahatma Gandhi's talisman could be explained in different ways. For me, an 8-year-old girl child, a girl who was born and living in a remote village somewhere in Odisha or Andhra Pradesh or Bihar or any part of India, or in South Sudan, Uganda, Ethiopia, Pakistan, anywhere. If she is living in slavery, her father or mother are working as bonded laborers, slave laborers. And that girl is most vulnerable to be pulled or pushed into prostitution, any other kind of exploitation. And if we are not able to reach out that girl and take her out from those situations and ensure quality, inclusive education and future opportunities, I won't call anything developed if that girl is not smiling in freedom. So if we have to think of creating an equal world, we have to begin with freeing all those children so that they can opportunity. You are sitting here in good positions. अच्छी बातें हम लोग यहाँ पर कर रहे हैं, अच्छा लगता है, लेकिन इसके पीछे आपकी मेहनत है, आपकी पढ़ाई लिखाई है. लेकिन इस पढ़ाई लिखाई के साथ जो सबसे बड़ी बात ये थी कि आपको स्कूल जाने की आजादी थी. मैं एक बच्ची की बात कर रहा हूं, a girl whom we freed from intergenerational slavery some years ago. I was driving my car and she was sitting in the back with the rest of the group of children who were all working in a stone quarry. The girl's father and grandfathers and mothers and grandmother worked there as slave laborer for ages. This was the third generation of slavery. All children were sitting and I was driving car very fast because it's always very risky once you liberate the group of children and the mafia and the criminals and everyone is there, sometimes carrying their guns. So I was trying to heal these children and trying to console them and trying to make them laugh or smile, but they were all traumatized. They have not seen roads. They have not seen houses. They have never thought of sitting in a car. So they could not comprehend freedom. So I told those boys and girls to pick up the bunch of banana which was lying in the back of my seat. And I was driving in the front seat. So there was a girl sitting just beside me and another boy was sitting beside her. Her name was Devli. This is change name. So I asked Devli, just share the bananas and eat those bananas. Girl picked up the banana and asked to the boy, neighboring boy, what is this? ऐसा प्याज तो मैंने कभी देखा नहीं. She said that I've never seen such an onion. The boy said that neither it's a potato because they have never seen banana. Even then I insisted that this is sweet, this is good, delicious, eat. And after a while, I saw that the girl was, and the boys and other girls' boys, they were all eating banana without peeling it. And of course, some of them started just pushing inside their mouth and others were throwing it away. And then I realized that how stupid was I. Why didn't I tell them that how to eat banana if they've never heard and seen banana? Then I taught them. I was in tears and then I realized that this difference of peeling and eating banana without peeling is a centuries old difference of freedom and slavery, knowledge and ignorance. So I taught them a little bit. And after a while, felt the hand of this tiny 8-year-old girl on my shoulder with a big challenging voice. Angry voice. She said, "Kyun re? Tu pehle kyun nahi aayo?" That was her language. "Oh man, why didn't you come early?" I knew before that Her mother was raped, and when her father tried to save her, he was beaten up and poked with bidi cigarettes. She has also seen the death of her younger brother without a pill of medication. And that's why when the girl asked, "Why didn't you come early?" This was not the question for me or challenge for me, my dear friends. You are in much better position. What stops you? What stops you to talk on behalf of all those children who are looking at your face? They are not going to come and knock your door. They are not going to hold you responsible or accountable. But you must feel a sense of moral accountability to all those children who are still living in slavery-like conditions in my country, this great nation of great rishis and munis and Mahatma Gandhi and Buddha. That needs compassion. I ask that these children who are working in mines and factories inside Delhi, thousands and thousands of children are brought to work to produce those goods which you are using. My simple question, whose children are they? Whose children are they? They are Mother India's children. If you really believe in Mother India, they are your children. They are my children. They are our children. That sense of responsibility should come inside, deep inside us. Only then we can solve the problem. Otherwise, there's plethora of laws and constitutional provisions and schemes and so on. And if we keep on thinking that we are in much privileged and better position, we can keep on talking and everybody will listen and praise us and clap us, this won't solve this deep problem. This problem could be solved when you feel that they are all our children. When I was a child, first day of my schooling began with a challenge, but was also began with a new spark in my life. I was 5-year-old. While entering in my school, and I studied in a local primary school. My father was a police constable who died when I was a young boy. So my mother had to work very hard, and my elder brothers had to pay for my engineering college fees and all kind of expenses. That was not an easy life. But when I went to school for the first time, I saw a cobbler boy sitting outside my school gate and looking at us whether we are going to give him some job. But हम तो सब नए जूते पहन के जा रहे थे. I saw his empty eyes. I saw his miserable face. And when I entered in my classroom, the first question in my life asked to my teacher, "Sir, why a child is sitting outside and not with rest of us in our classroom?" He said, "Calm down. This is not uncommon. Poor children have to work and help families." I said, "Okay, sir." More or less similar answers were given by my parents, my mother. Every morning and evening, I kept on seeing that boy working there. One day I gathered all my courage and asked him and his father, who was sitting alongside. Boy was shy, but father stood up with folded hands. हमारे यहाँ जात पात इतनी गहरी है, हिंदू मुसलमान का भेदभाव इतना गहरा है, हमारे यहाँ इतने डिवाइड हैं. भगवान ने दुनिया हमको एक दी, लेकिन हमने टुकड़े टुकड़े में बांट दिया हमारे समाज को, मानवता को और दुनिया को, धरती को लाइनें खींच खींच कर, जिनको हम बॉर्डर कहते हैं. खैर, उस आदमी ने हाथ जोड़कर कहा, "बाबूजी, मैंने कभी सोचा नहीं. I never thought about it. Because my father, my grandfather and I started work since we were children. And so is my son," he said. Then with almost tears in his eyes, हाथ जोड़कर वो बोले, "बाबूजी, स्कूल जाने के लिए तो आप लोग हैं." Listen my words which he told me. These are his words. स्कूल जाने के लिए तो आप लोग हैं, हम तो इसी काम के लिए पैदा हुए हैं. मैं रोने लगा. I started crying out of anger. I could not understand. I don't know what child labor or child slavery or why children are not going to school, because I was taught in my home that every child is supposed to go to school after a certain age. लेकिन वो कहता है कि you are born to go to school. ये 50-60 साल पुरानी बात है, 60 साल पुरानी बात है. 60 साल बाद भी अगर हम वहीं खड़े हैं तो बहुत सोचने की बात है. You will keep on organizing such meetings and workshops and we will keep on talking and come out with good reports. अच्छी बात है, अच्छी बात है. लेकिन if you cannot ignite that fire of compassion, fire of deeper moral sense of responsibility and accountability to those unknown people, unheard people, those who don't have their voice, those who don't have their face to tell who they are. In India and elsewhere in the world, we cannot solve the problem. Dear friends, freedom is the key, and then ensure opportunity. दुनिया इतनी गरीब नहीं है. World is not so poor that it cannot ensure education for every child. मैं थोड़ा देर ले चुका हूं, 1 मिनट और लेके अपनी बात खत्म करता हूं अगर आप इजाजत दें तो. अभी दुनिया में जब ये सब कुछ फैल रहा है पेंडेमिक की वजह से, आफ्टरमैथ, me and my colleagues decided to bring together all the moral leaders of the world. That included Nobel laureates, not from peace alone, but also from science disciplines, economics, literature, etc. So I have been in contact with them, and we have created a group called Laureates and Leaders for Children that also includes some presidents, prime ministers, and former prime ministers, presidents, kings, queens, princes, etc. Those who have strong moral voice in the world. So recently, and also the heads of some UN agencies, like the head of UNICEF, the head of UNESCO, not head, but deputy head of UNESCO, and head of WHO, they are the part of this group, which we have created, and it was launched in India at Rashtrapati Bhavan, under the guidance of Indian Prime Minister, then Prime Minister Pranab Mukherjee ji. So we raised this issue that we have to ensure social protection for every child, particularly to African children. I will tell you that I was the part of this Sustainable Development Goals process, as I said before, for the inclusion of education in a better language, stronger and clearer language, as well as pushing the agenda to incorporate child slavery, child labor, etc. In SDGs, which was not the part of Millennium Development Goals. So we kept on fighting during the whole tenure of MDGs. But then we launched a campaign, and finally, this is also the part of Goal 8.7, child labor, etc. But after the announcement of SDGs, within the 4 years, and that was pre-pandemic time, between 2016 and 2020, for the first time in 20 years, the number of child laborers globally has increased from 152 million to 160 million. We cannot afford, humanity cannot afford, the future of humankind cannot afford this kind of reversal. So we have called for immediate attention to African children. And also, I will tell you that when you are talking of equality, we must not forget that an additional billionaire was born every 2.5 days during this pandemic time. And 11,000 children between the age of 6 and 11 have been pushed into child labor every day. Every day. This is the situation. I'm not going to ask you to be pessimistic, because the change is possible and change is inevitable. Change will come. When this man told me that we are born to work and not you, when I was 5 years old, I decided that I will fight out this human curse, this child labor. We organized the worldwide march in 1998, the global march against child labor, which has been joined by more than 15 million children, teachers. The Global Confederation of all teachers' unions, they were the part of it, and several student unions and governments and non-governmental organizations. That has resulted in a new international law, ILO Convention on the Worst Forms of Child Labor. But we knew that freedom of children and good quality education for every child are the two sides of the same coin. We cannot achieve one without other. If you keep on hiring teachers, if you keep on making buildings and opening schools, and if the children are trapped into mining or factory or homework, domestic work in that area, and they are not brought into school classrooms, then you are not going to solve the problem of education. And that was our strong argument during the MDGs. So now we have in all these components in SDGs, we have seen that how the child labor has decreased from that time of my global march in 1998. That time, 260 million children were working as child laborers. That number has gone down to 152 million in 2016. But again, the progress is reversed, unfortunately. We have to be very, very vigilant about it. But we have proven that if we have courage, resources will follow. Political will follow. Social mobilization and support will follow. Dear friends, we as an Indian must believe that there could be millions of solutions, millions of problems, but there are hundreds of solutions in our country. And we are the people who believe in solving the problems. And we believe in not only solving the problem of our country, we believe in Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. The entire universe is our home, it's our family. I would once again thank you very much. You have that power to change. Of course, you could be principals, you could be government officers, you could be professors, you could be whatever, doctors, parents of some children, teachers, etc. But you are someone who is born with divine potential, divine capabilities. God can never be so meager to send you on the earth with एक मुट्ठी भर या एक चुल्लू भर पानी दे के नहीं भेजेगा आपको समुद्र दे के परमात्मा ने, अल्लाह मियाँ ने, भगवान ने भेजा है, तो हमको उसका इस्तेमाल करना चाहिए. There was a heavy fire broken out in jungle once. All animals and birds, everyone was leaving the jungle and rushing for a safer place, including King Lion. And Lion noticed that there was a tiny hummingbird flying straight towards the fires. And he was shocked and shouted, "What are you doing? Are you committing suicide?" She said, "No, sir. I am going to extinguish this fire." And he again challenged, No, come back. You can't. She said, "No, sir. I was born and grew up in this jungle. I am doing my bit. Look at my beak. I am carrying a drop of water. I am doing my bit." And she flew. Dear sisters, dear brothers, dear friends, there is a tiny hummingbird inside each one of you. Just acknowledge that bird. Just acknowledge your power. Just discover that power and use it for the betterment of humankind. I hope you will do. I am here just to awaken that hummingbird inside each one of you. Thank you very much.
आभार महोदय। डॉक्टर सुधा आचार्य, चेयरपर्सन NPSC, तथा यहाँ उपस्थित सभी विशिष्ट व्यक्ति की ओर से हम तहे दिल से आपका शुक्रिया अदा करते हैं कि आपने अपने अनमोल वचनों से हमारा मार्गदर्शन किया। साथ ही एक ऐसे भविष्य की भी कामना करते हैं कि आपने जिस मशाल को जलाया है उसकी रोशनी में बाल श्रम जैसी सामाजिक बुराइयां बिल्कुल समाप्त हो जाएं और इन बच्चों की शिक्षा तथा विकास के लिए यह मशाल अनंत मशालों को जलाते हुए एक नया उजाला लेकर आए। आपका धन्यवाद सर।